I always forget. Hey,
I
look at that. Um,
appreciate the reminder. Thank you.
Indeed, I that's like the first thing that I forget when I run a meeting. So um, I can remind other people, just not myself. It's nice to see everyone. I recognize a handful of names, and for some of you, this is our first time meeting, so nice to meet everyone. Um, and so I will dive in with some slides, but again, happy to take questions throughout if folks want to pop questions into the chat or raise your hand, or also I can leave hands at or leave time at the end for additional questions. Okay, sharing my screen. Slides. Let me try that again. Oh, okay. Can everyone see slides with lots of photos? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So we're here today to talk about, or I'm here to talk about a grant that we call Arts Alive. This is one of several grant programs that ArtsWestchester runs. This is a state-funded re-grant opportunity that is running currently and serves both Westchester County and Rockland County. We have up on the screen a mix of things that have been funded in the past year, some of which some folks on the call should recognize. So we are the Arts Council for Westchester County, but again, also serving Rockland and throughout the lower Hudson Valley. We have a space in downtown White Plains. We have a gallery. We run a website that shares information, much like ACOR. I will take a quick sidestep to commend your efforts on working on a cultural plan for Rockland. That is also something we have tried to do for Westchester for a number of years. And we always get lots of heartfelt good interest, but we haven't actually been able to land the plane yet in doing one. So if you guys get there, I commend you, and it sounds like you've made some good inroads on that score. So good on you.
Sue, I just want to let you know we're seeing your presenter view. If that's, I don't know if you want that or not.
No, I thought I switched it. Thank you.
Actually, Joanne shared that. Thank you, Joanne.
Okay. I
Okay.
have two screens and I never know which one works. Are you now seeing? Did I
Yes.
freeze? Okay. Ooh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I myself is frozen, but if you guys can still see and hear me, hopefully my screen wakes up in a second. There we go. So we do a variety of different things in addition to grant making. Again, we have a gallery, we have a website, we have a newsletter, we do public art around the Lower Hudson Valley, and we are also an advocacy team working on support for artists and organizations throughout Lower Hudson Valley. Come on, computer. See if I can advance my slide. Ooh, I did. I went too far. Um, so again, here to talk today about Arts Alive. Arts Alive is one of several grants that we as a funder run. We receive our funding, which we have to apply for in our own right, from a mix of both state support and county support. This funding source is state legislature, the Office of the Governor, and the New York State Council on the Arts. So this funding is very locally focused. It is driven around themes of access and engagement and is built to support organizations and artists to offer public programs, to create new work or a series of new work or some mix thereof. We see applications in pretty much any discipline that I can think of, visual art, film, theater, poetry, music, dance, and all of the above. And we endeavor to support organizations and artists creating programs and doing work that engages the community and is also reflective of the community. It is a project-based grant, so as opposed to organizational funding or capital funding, it is meant to support a specific project or a series of projects that have elements of community engagement throughout. And as I go through my slides, I'll give some more specific examples of things that have been funded and some of the do's and don'ts. But keeping in mind a couple of important things. This is a competitive grant process. It is an online application that is available right now. A little bit later on in the presentation, I'll talk through how and where you can access the application. And again, some advice and tips and tricks on attacking it if you choose to move forward and actually submit an application, which we hope you do. So keeping in mind that this is project-based funding, there's a variety of things that the funding can, but also cannot be used for. First and foremost, we hope that the funding can go towards supporting artists and artist fees, even if it's something nominal. We want to see artists compensated for their work. Everyone's time has value. Could be supplies and materials related to executing a project. It could be space costs. It could be marketing costs if you spend some money to do a boosted social media post. It could be equipment rental and things like that. I encourage everyone, I'll show you where this is on our website, but I encourage everyone, even if you've applied in the past, to spend some time with the guidelines, which are available online for download. It goes into much greater detail about the do's and don'ts of what funding can and cannot be used for. But again, keeping in mind that it's project-based funding, so it's expenses that are specifically related to executing that particular project. Very, very important dates up on the screen right now. The application is open right now. The submission deadline is Tuesday, March 3rd, 11:59 p.m. So we got just about a month. You could go in after I finish talking and submit today if you wanted to. I do encourage folks, if you are pursuing an application, to try to work on getting things in early, just so that it's not Tuesday, March 3rd at 11:58 and you're hitting submit and it's not going through and then you panic. We do have a dedicated built-in early deadline of a week prior, Tuesday, February 24th. That gives you guaranteed review by staff, which is myself and my colleague Jennifer, to review and give our opinions and some modest feedback on perhaps areas where you could strengthen your application. So myself and my colleague, we are the administrators of this whole process. We're not the decision makers. It's a competitive grant review. And what we mean by that is it goes through a panel. Now for Rockland, it is a Rockland panel. Rockland artists, Rockland past grantees, folks from other nonprofits. So emphasizing that element of community. It's also community decision making. And maybe these are folks who are familiar with your work, but you can't rely on that. So you always have to write as if, I describe it as a room full of strangers. You don't know who's reading your application, but it is competitive. They need to read your proposal and understand everything perfectly just from what's on the page and with your work samples. And I'll go into more detail of what that means a little bit later. But with the early deadline of February 24, that gives myself and my colleague the opportunity to lend our expertise to areas that we might suggest could benefit from a brief rewrite, maybe give us some other work samples, more work samples. Maybe your budget's a little wonky. Maybe your marketing plan needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. So we will read it and give some advice. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Doesn't mean you're automatically funded, but it's things that we can anticipate maybe the panel might have a question on. You'll have the opportunity to do some very brief revisions and edits, and then it'll be turned back, and then it continues on through that panel process. If this is your first time through applying for a grant at all, or at least through us, I would encourage you to try to take advantage of that early deadline, just so you get the sense of the process and some areas and questions. It all ties back to what is fundable within the framework of this grant. It's not a commentary on the project. It's not a commentary on the work itself or the artistry. It's just what is being presented and what is fundable and what makes it the most competitive. So your final deadline is March 3rd. Your early deadline is February 24. Again, you could submit today if you wanted to. I do encourage folks, even if you're on the fence about submitting, just go in and take a look so you get a sense of the types of questions and the types of materials that we're looking for. Looking further on into the calendar, so the panels will be meeting. I think we've got ourselves slated for like late March, early April. This is a bit of a sidestep. If someone decides that maybe this is not your year to apply, but you want to see the other side of the conversation, we are currently recruiting for panelists. So I'm happy to talk to folks separately or offline about serving as a panelist. If you don't want to be an applicant this year, your choice. Or you're welcome to refer folks to us if you have a colleague in the field who you think could be a good critical eye. They should be based in Rockland, meaning either live there or work there or both. but we do take referrals from the field all the time, so I'm happy to take suggestions. Once the panel process is complete, they make their recommendations. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like in terms of what the panel is reviewing and how they respond. It then goes to our board of directors and our grants committee to affirm the final decisions. And then we notify everyone of the final outcomes no later than mid-May. You'll get an email from us one way or another. If you are awarded, you may also be contacted by your local elected officials saying congratulations as well. And then if you're awarded, you'll get a contract emailed to you, and your project period is starting as of June 1 of 2026 through May 31 of 27. So you have anywhere within reason, within that 12-month window to execute your project, which means that you could start your project June 1st. It might get a little tight on time because you may not get your notification until 2 weeks prior, but your project period starts June 1. Your project period could also start April of 27, just so long as that it's begun and completed or materially completed by the end of May 2027. The way that we approach awardees is after you get your notice of award, you get your contract, you sign it, you send it back, and then your award payment is paid usually in a single payment up front, and then you have the rest of the year to execute your project. And then once it's done, your final deliverable is a final report, which is also done online, and it's capturing takeaways. How did the project go? What was your final budget? Things like that. We don't ask grantees to provide receipts, canceled checks, anything of that nature. It's largely narrative, but we do like to see samples of the work that was done or the event that was executed. So photos from the event, video from the event, press coverage, what have you. We want to see how it all turned out. But also in an ideal world, you have kept us in the loop as things have progressed. And if we are able to attend or send someone from ArtsWestchester to attend, or at least set eyes in the event, that's always ideal. I'll pause for a second. Any questions at this point? The information I've covered so far or the dates? I'll go quick through. Okay. Ooh, I see something in the chat. Okay. All right, I'll keep going. So now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the different kind of focus areas. Sorry, Elliot, did you have a question? Or are you just stretching?
I was just stretching, but
Okay.
but
Over here waving.
I mean, you might get to this, but this I asked you the other day about the applying for NISCA and applying for this. I only asked half of the question, which was it was about applying for the last NISCA and not applying for this one. But I realized I didn't ask you about if you apply and whether you get it or not in Arts Alive, can you then apply for the next NISCA one? Does that keep you from that?
So Niska, Elliot is bringing up a good point that is definitely part of today's conversation. Um, the funding that sources this grant is from NISCA, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the guidelines, all the parameters of this grant are theirs ostensibly. We are a re-grant agency of them. Because of that and the parameters that they have set, they're also very intentional and mindful of any perceived overlap. So if you are an organization who has applied for, regardless of funding outcome, but their mandate is if you have applied for funding in their most recent grant cycle, which ran in summer of 25, if you applied in that cycle, you are not eligible to apply for this funding. And that is regardless of funding outcome. That also extends to organizations if you're an individual artist looking for a partner or fiscal sponsor, which I'll explain in more detail in a minute. That also puts you out of contention to serve as a fiscal sponsor. Again, this is a NISCA parameter that is to avoid any overlap or perceived overlap. So if your organization applied this past year, unfortunately, you're not able to apply for this funding. That being said, at the risk of sounding like I am subverting my own guidelines, I am happy to explore with folks if there are ways to still make it happen, even in light of these parameters. Is it possible to fund an artist directly to then do something in partnership? perhaps. I try not to come from a place of no, even if the guidelines are pointing in that direction. So that's a long-winded way of saying, if you applied this year, you're ineligible to apply for this. And if anyone's not sure, they forget, or they're not sure what category that you went into, NYSCA sends us a list of everyone who applied across the entire state. So I have that as a reference if anyone wants to double check with me after today. We have that on hand.
And the other part of that was, if you apply for Arts Alive, does that prevent you from then going for the next NYSCA grant?
So funny enough, no. So the limitation only runs one way. They care if you went for NYSCA proper and are trying to come this way. If you apply for this funding, it's actually viewed as, in a sense, what's the best word for it? It gives you an extra step of legitimacy if you apply for and receive this regrant funding, because it is a regrant of NYSCA. So since we are acting as agents on their behalf, it's like you've kind of jumped to the first hurdle and passed. So long way around of answering. You can apply for us and it won't impact what you do, which would be NYSCA 27 this coming summer. It's just what you do this past year if you already applied for NYSCA.
Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will say, just between us folks, it is something that we, meaning the regional arts councils who get this funding, have asked for reconsideration on the regardless of funding outcome aspect of it, because it is a limitation. And if one door has closed, why should another door close? So if anyone is kind of feeling those feelings, I am with you on that. We have tried. Contact your state representatives, see if they can help us change it. But for the moment, these are the parameters that we've been set, so we will operate within those. So diving deeper into, I'll talk with my hands a lot. There's kind of different kind of subsets and program areas within the whole umbrella of Arts Alive. One set that we'll start with is support for organizations. So this could be any Rockland-based not-for-profit that is offering community-based programs, art workshops, performances, what have you, that wants to offer a performance, a workshop, or again, some other kind of like public engagement opportunity. Project-based funding awards range, or the request ranges from no less than $1,000, no max, no greater, from a request standpoint of $7,500. On average, just for transparency, the awards tend to be around the $2,000, $2,500, maybe $3,000 range on average. We are transparent about that at the outset, just so that you know. A lot of it depends on how many people apply and how competitive everything is. But if someone is requesting the full $7,500, it's been rare that we can award the full $7,500, but shoot your shot. I always tell folks, write what is real. Do not undercut yourself because you think it makes you more competitive. If you really need $7,500, but you only ask for $2,000, if your application does gangbusters, I can probably only award you the $2,000 that you asked for. But if you had asked for the $75,000, maybe we could have done a little bit greater. So ask for what is real, but just recognize that it is a very competitive grant process, and there is an intentional prompt in the application that will ask you, how will your project change in the event that you're awarded less than what your request is, which is a very real possibility. And so we want you thinking about other opportunities. Do you have the capacity for other fundraising? Is this a program that lends itself to some kind of admission fee that is allowable? Your event does not need to be free in order to be viable or competitive. You can charge tickets for our purposes. If you're working with a venue like libraries, I think frequently don't allow for tickets. So that's a separate question. But for this grant, your event does not automatically need to be free to be accessible. You can charge tickets and still be eligible. So that could be another source of income or funding to support the project. Crowdfunding, business support, other donors, you have funding in reserves. We want you thinking about other ways that you might be able to support the project in the event that this grant, if awarded, doesn't get you 100% of where you need to be. Again, this must be fully open to the public. with the exception of arts education. For the purposes of this grant, we define arts education largely as in-school residencies. If your project is educational in nature, that doesn't necessarily deem it arts education for the purposes of this grant. It's, are you going into a school and partnering with them to do a multi-session residency over a period of time? That is how we define arts education, again, for the purposes of this grant. You'll see questions throughout the application form that prompt you, some yes, no's. Does your project involve a school partnership? If you click yes, that'll then reveal a separate set of questions. If you click no, you'll just keep going. That being said, arts education will be adjudicated within the framework of community impact, because there is still a community impact community being impacted. By and large, the applicants in this category are nonprofit entities. Again, you don't have to be exclusively arts-based, you just need to be based in Rockland and doing a public program. There are ways to come in, though, if you are an entity that doesn't yet have its nonprofit status, or if you're an individual artist that wants to do some kind of public engagement program. So let's say I am a newly formed entity or a club, a collective. I don't have my nonprofit status yet. I am a collective of artists. I really want to put on this exhibition. I'm making stuff up. I've secured space at a local library, but since I don't have my nonprofit status, I, the collective, cannot apply for the funding directly. I need a fiscal sponsor or partner. Your fiscal sponsor must be a Rockland-based not-for-profit, doesn't have to be arts-based, doesn't have to be inherently involved in the project. It's just an organization that has agreed to essentially serve as a pass-through. They're your financial conduit. I've heard it framed as they are lending their nonprofit status to you for the purposes of the application. So you apply through your conduit, you are awarded $2,000. The contract and the funding goes to your conduit, but then they pass it through to you. We personally don't mandate or expect that there is any fee associated with serving as a fiscal sponsor. If that organization deems that they would like to receive some kind of remuneration for their service, that's a conversation to have with that organization, but it's not something that we weigh in on one way or another. If it is part of the budget, then part of your funding can go towards that, because that is a cost of doing the project. So I was just speaking to another organization here in Westchester last night. They keep, I think, a 2% fee when they serve as a fiscal sponsor. But again, your award can go to cover that cost because it's a cost of doing the project. If anyone wants to spend more time on the nuances of a fiscal sponsor or an organization partnering with you, I'm happy to spend more time on that. Within reason, I can also help make suggestions. I can't make direct necessarily promises or yes, they will be your fiscal sponsor, but I'm happy to make referrals. In my experience, libraries can serve as fiscal sponsors. It could be a house of worship, so long as they're registered as a nonprofit. It also can be an organization who is also applying for funding for their own discrete separate project, and the two are not seen as in conflict. It makes a little bit more moving parts for that organization, but someone can serve as a sponsor in an application and then also apply for their own in their own right. And each can be completely separate and fully competitive within the framework of the application. The fiscal sponsor also does not have any financial responsibility to contribute towards the budget of the project. They're not held responsible for the cost. Again, they're just seen as a pass-through, but they've agreed to serve as that pass-through. And if you need to go that route, you do need a committed fiscal sponsor at the time of the application. This grant does not have any matching funds attached to it or match requirement. There's some organizations or some other funding opportunities where you have to prove some kind of matching funds. We don't require a match. Keeping in mind that the maximum ask is $7,500. If your whole project budget is $10,000, then you're going to need to show where the other $2,500 are coming from. Otherwise, if the whole budget is $7,500, then just show us how the 7,500 shakes out. And the application has a budget template. So we have kind of the categories pre-built for you. But if you have an anticipated income or expense that doesn't slot into one of the ones that we've provided, there's also a category for other, and there's also areas for further detail or budget notes. I strongly recommend folks take advantage of those additional columns and budget notes. So if you're going to charge tickets, so let's budget $1,000 for ticket sales. I should know in a budget note, well, how does that shake out? Is it I'm going to sell X number of tickets and they're all $25, or I have a tiered ticket structure and I'm going to do a student ticket and a senior ticket and a what have you ticket, or I have a committed business sponsor. They've committed $1,000 towards this project and here's the name of my business, or I have put in a request to a local business. I anticipate that it's going to come through at $1,000, but that request is still pending. All of those are pieces of information that is helpful for your panel. Because again, your panel doesn't have the opportunity to speak to you. They're only going by what's in front of them on the application. So if they see a budget and it says $1,000, is that committed? Is that anticipated? Has it been asked for? Has it ever been funded before? Do you even know where it's coming from? When do you expect it to be paid out? All these bits of detail, you don't want to leave questions on the table. You want to try to anticipate a question that a panelist might ask, which again, that's the role that we as the reviewers can serve if you go in for that early deadline. Applicants must be based in the county where you're executing your project. I know with our two counties, there's lots of opportunity for partnership. I have Rockland artists who work in Westchester and vice versa. If you're based in Rockland, you're doing your project in Rockland, super. If you're based in Rockland, but you want to do a project in Westchester, you're going to need a fiscal sponsor to ostensibly bring you into the county, and then the funding would go through that fiscal sponsor. It gets a little nuanced. If anyone is in that situation, again, let's maybe set up a time to speak separately. There are lots of things that are possible. You just have to plan for them. I think I've gone through all of my bullets on this slide. I will pause here to see if I have any questions so far. Otherwise, I'll move on to artist funding.
Yes, I do have a question.
Fire away.
Regarding the arts education, if you partner with a school in that, let's say you get some student performers to perform at the event, is that considered an in-school partnership? Because we're including students in the project, or it's not because it's not like in the building and necessarily for the students.
Yeah, it may not be, because using students for a project, just on its face, not necessarily. It's for us, arts education is, are you going into the school over a series of multiple contact sessions and using the arts in some educational format?
Yeah.
So just based on what you've described, it sounds like probably not arts education, again, for the purposes of this grant, but maybe we can set up a time to chat, and go a little bit more into the specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay to keep going?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay. So we spent a chunk of time talking about organizations or collectives working with organizations to do public programs, public engagement in some method. Now we're going to switch the lens a little bit and talk about support for individual artists. And again, there's a couple of different nuances within the individual artist umbrella. There's what I think of as kind of two paths. Individual artists can come in either for essentially a commissioning grant, so support to create a new work or a body of new works, keeping in mind our project period. So the creation is happening somewhere within that 12-month window starting June. Are they already creating now? That's fine. So long as some active creation of new work or a body of new work is happening within that 12-month window. That is what we deem as a new work commissioning grant, artist commission. And those grants range from a request of $1,000 to $5,000. No fiscal sponsor is needed in that. The artist would be the direct grantee of record. They would be executing their project as the lead artist. And somewhere along the way, either in the development or in the final realization, there's some element of, again, community engagement. So for an individual artist doing a commissioning work, what does that mean? That is an open rehearsal, that's an artist talk, that's an exhibition where folks can interact with the work and maybe the artist is present. That's a workshop. That's some opportunity for the community or some cohort of the community can interact with the artist and the work somewhere along the way. I recognize that maybe not every artist's art form lends itself to that. So, again, happy to set up time to explore what that could look like. But since this grant emphasizes access and engagement, we want to make sure that the art that's being created is accessible to the community at some point along the way. So that's an individual artist grant, new work commissioning grant. I need funding to create a piece or a series of pieces. Track 2, the work has been created, my play is written, it's already done. I need funding to get it on its feet. I want to do a stage reading. Work has been done. I need money for rehearsal time, performance space, pay my actors. Now we're back kind of in the neighborhood of a community impact like we were just talking about. And then we get back into the relationship of needing a fiscal sponsor or community partner. So when it comes to individual artists, one of the determining factors is, do you need support to create the work or do you need support just to present the work? And that'll tell you kind of what your path is. If it's the presentation side, not the creation side, but presentation, then the rest of the parameters of a community impact project would still apply, ranging request 1,000 up to 7,500. We need that fiscal sponsor, someone to partner with you. And again, echoing some of the earlier guidance, a NYSCA applicant cannot be a fiscal sponsor. With the artist commission, as I mentioned earlier, it could be pretty much any art form that you can think of. If you need to explore ways or methods, what a community engagement component looks like, we can have that conversation. This is also a grant in either of these focus areas. Matching funds are not required. But again, if you're going to go over what your max threshold is, then you would just show us or tell us where other funds might come from. So with the artists, similar to organizations, we have our two paths. Do we need support to create or do we need support to present? If it feels like you're kind of in the middle, one of my functions is to help advise. I try not to be too directive, but to advise on, based on what you describe, where I think you would be the most competitive. Can't promise anything, but I can help you figure out where you might be the most competitive within the framework of this grant. This slide has a lot of words on it, and a lot of it is stuff that I've covered a bit, but I'll revisit in the framework of fiscal sponsors. There's one other facet that I hadn't dived into because I know sometimes it can get a little confusing. A fiscal sponsor versus a community partner. Still based in your home county, still an organization that hasn't applied for NYSCA funding, still just a local nonprofit, doesn't have to be arts-based, but it's someone who has agreed to work with you. The major difference, fiscal sponsor versus community partner, is whether or not they are inherently involved in the project. I've already described a bit a fiscal sponsor, which is an organization that's not involved in the project. They're just that pass-through. A community partner is an organization that now is involved in some way. They are your host venue. They are going to help you promote the event. They do have a responsibility in your project in some way. The nuances come down to the level of involvement. Are they involved or no? If they're not involved, fiscal sponsor. If they are involved, community partner. All the other parameters stay the same. The other major difference is with a fiscal sponsor, they have to be the ones to receive the funds. For a community partner, it's it's deemed optional. They could receive it on your behalf. They don't have to. But if they don't receive the funding, then you have to identify someone within your collective or you, the artist, who is going to receive the funds. And then all the implications and responsibilities after that. In a minute, I'm going to take down the slideshow and walk folks through where you actually find the application and the steps to get it in. When you get there, jumping ahead, you will see the kind of the home screen looks like this: organization funding or artist funding. I do encourage folks, again, if you're just kind of, you're on the fence, you're thinking about maybe applying, we're not sure, jump in, click through some stuff. It doesn't commit you to anything. You don't have to fill it all out in one shot. You can just kind of click around and see the nature of the questions being asked, the prompts for work samples. All of these applications also have optional areas for additional support materials. That could be a letter of support from a past collaborator, an elected official, someone who took a class with you and fell in love with music. It could be examples of social media. It could be other press. It could be other examples of past work. Just again, if you're not sure or this is your first time through, I do encourage folks just to jump online and get familiar with the applications themselves, and then maybe that'll help steer you in what type of proposal you think you want to put in. Or again, there's always that option of maybe if you want to sit this year out, do you want to be a panelist? Do you need to engage some other collaborators? All that is at your disposal, but I do encourage folks to, if you're thinking about it, to jump in and take a look. This I already walked through most of. This is just, again, the life cycle of the whole process. So you apply, staff reviews. If you're in early, we give you that feedback. It goes to the panel. It then goes to the board for commitment, and then on to final decisions and then contracting. So just walking through those steps. So right now we're in step one, the submission process, and then all of this will be completed by the final announcements, which was slated for mid-May. I saw a question in the chat. So let's see.
Yeah.
The fiscal sponsorship. So the question is the fiscal sponsorship or community partner new for 26-27? It was yes and no. It was optional last year, and I think the year before. The reason we were able to make it optional is that for the last couple of years, we had received the funding directly from the state legislature, which enabled us to relax some of the parameters that are set by NYSCA, because at the time it was not coming directly through NYSCA. Now that we are back in partnership with NYSCA and the funding is a NYSCA grant, a NYSCA regrant, we're back in line with having to abide by the NYSCA set parameters, which does require for a fiscal sponsor if you are an unregistered collective or an individual artist. You can call me Sue or Susan. I answer to both. Susan is my name. I usually go by Sue for work purposes, and my family calls me Susan. That's fine. Got my computer. A couple of FYIs. And this, I think, was also in place last year. It's one application per artist or organization. If you have multiple things that are kicking around in your head, you're going to have to pick your favorite horse and run with it. If you're not sure, I might be able to help. Again, not be too directive, but help you parse out what feels the most competitive within the framework of the things that we can and cannot fund. The second bullet, this was in place last year. It's actually always been in place, but we always reiterate it. Priority to new applicants for folks who are not funded in recent cycles. That does not mean that if you were funded last year, go away. It just means that we have limited resources. We're trying to stay mindful of how far those resources can stretch. And in the event that it's an organization that has been funded multiple times, we might have to make a difficult decision when it comes down to it. But everyone goes through the same process. Everyone goes through the panel review. The panel scores everything based on artistic merit, benefit to the community, viability, strength of your budget, strength of your work samples. So everyone is going to go through the same process, and then we'll see how everything shakes out. With that review process, just to spend another minute on that, if you have applied for funding through us before, even if it was a couple of years ago, I'm happy to set up a time to share with you how that panel responded to that proposal. The panels do change year over year. We rotate some folks back through, but largely they do change over. So whoever adjudicated last year, that will not 100% be this year's panel. So it really is a fresh start. But even if you were funded, regardless of the funding outcome, I encourage you to take some time to learn how that panel responded to that proposal, because invariably they might have had questions about the budget. They might have wanted to see more work samples. They might have, found the scope overly ambitious, but they fell in love with the intention, those kinds of things. So I can share constructive feedback, and I always prompt the panels for constructive as well. If anyone says, and it usually doesn't come up, if anyone says, I don't like it, I'm not going to let anyone get away with that. That's not constructive or helpful or kind. It's also not the point. I don't care if you like it. Has the artist proven that they can do the work? Have they shown capacity? Do they have a track record? Do they have a portfolio? Have they done this type of work before? Does their budget make sense? Does it seem like they have a plan for engagement? Those are the things that the panel is prompted to respond to, and those are the types of feedback that I can then share back if there are some questions around any of those constructive elements. The NYSCA part we already touched on. The grant guidelines, again, I'll take my screen down in a minute and show you where on our website the guidelines and the links to the application are. Start early. Work samples should be current. So I think it's within the last 3 years, according to our guidelines. If your work form is performance-based in any nature, dance, theater, what have you, I encourage you to give us work samples that are video or at least audio. It happens more than once that I get a theater company that's just going to give me their playbill, which is very nice. Doesn't tell me anything. We need to see the work. So if you have performance footage, it could be rehearsal footage, it could be social media, I encourage performance-based work samples if your work is performance in nature. Letters of interest and commitment from your proposed venue. You don't need a confirmed venue at the time of application, but if you don't have a confirmed venue, we should at least know what you have in mind, where we're headed. So you're in touch with XYZ venue, but they haven't opened their calendar for spring of 27 yet. Or, I have a letter of commitment, I have a letter of interest. If you're completely at sea and need help identifying a venue, I might be able to weigh in, or I might tap Dorothy or frankly some other folks on the call for suggestions. If you need space for, exhibition, performance, what have you. Deborah, I see you. Okay, I'll reach out to you. Lost my train of thought. Oh, so you don't need a committed venue at the time of the application, but if you are funded, I will need to see a committed venue before funding will be released, just looking into the future. In the application itself, once you're all done, and you hit submit, you will get an email saying, congratulations, thank you for your submission. If you don't get that email, your submission did not go through. So again, hopefully I don't have folks panicking at 11:58 going, why is it going through? And I do recommend folks get in there early. If it doesn't go through, that means there's some required question that was not satisfied. So you missed an upload or a field or something. So go back through. And I think sometimes they'll even kick you to the part of the screen that you missed. Not 100% though, it might depend on the browser. But if it doesn't go through, if you don't get that success email within just like a couple of minutes, something got missed. So go back and check. But that's why it's also good to get it in early. And as I already mentioned, panel comments, anytime, only constructive stuff, completely anonymous. And I can't say it enough. It's how that panel responded to that proposal within the framework of this grant. It's not commentary on the art itself. It's, was this fundable? Was this competitive within the framework of what we can fund? And I think my last slide is contact information. Yes. So I'll jump to this link in a second to show everyone where on our website you can find more information and the link to apply. And then this website or email grants@artswestchester.org that routes to myself and my colleague Jennifer. We are the grants department. It routes to the both of us at the same time. So if you have questions or want to set up a time to chat, you can email the both of us and we'll go from there. And reiterating earlier, so I'm going to email this deck. Actually, Dorothy, I made some updates, so I'm going to send it to you again. Email this deck to Dorothy so she can share it with you all. So I'm going to jump to the website in a minute, but I can also pause and take questions.
Sue, I just have a quick question, and I'm assuming you don't know, but we don't know the total amount of funding, correct, for Rockland or, I mean, there's a total overall. Can you share that or?
Yeah, the total that was awarded, including admin, was just north of 200. So I have 200,000 for the two counties, including administration. I think backing out admin, I think that leaves me with, I can give you the final numbers, but I think it's in the neighborhood of 140
between both
grant between both counties.
Yeah, okay.
Between both counties, which is sorry,
it's a little bit more than in the past, correct?
That's my question. Yeah.
If we take out the high years when we had significant recovery money,
well, yeah,
put that aside, yeah. If we ignore the last 2 years when we had recovery money, yes, it is an increase because when we first started working with Rockland, I had 105 between the two counties.
Right.
So on the whole, it's more.
Okay.
I'm gonna find my website and I'll resume my screen share in a second.
And just a follow up, you don't know the breakdown because does it depend on the number of grants and the quality of the grants and what the recommendations are for funding?
Yes, to all the above.
Okay.
No, I don't know breakdowns yet. Yes, a lot of it will depend on what comes in. Historically, Westchester puts in more applications than Rockland. But we always try to stay mindful of percentages relative to what's come in versus what is funded. We also look at geography, we look at discipline. Both counties have their kind of like hot spots of what areas tend to have the most proposals in, which is also something we take into consideration. For us, it's White Plains and Ossining and Yonkers and New Rochelle. I know for you guys, it's Nyack and Haverstraw, but I also see Suffern, I see Pomona. I see New City. So we try to look at the whole pie and see what corners of the world we're hitting. I think I interrupted my screen share. Let's go back to that.
Hey, Sue, I have a question for you.
Yep. Yeah.
You emphasize new works and commissioning with artists, but those can be in the organizational category as well. Or if there is say a playwright, it could go to the artist, but it could also go to the organization, right?
So if you're coming into the artist new work commission, the artist is the applicant.
Right. I'm saying if we have a choice, it could be the artist or it could be the organization.
I guess the short answer is yes. The longer answer is it does kind of depend on the nature of the project. But yeah, you have to decide. The way I think about it is, whose project is it and what are we trying to do? If you, the organization, are commissioning an artist, you could come in as an organization application and then part of your budget has an artist fee for that commissioned work. Or the artist could come in for their own. You shouldn't do both. The panel's going to sniff you out. But if there might be some other ways to quilt it together.
All right, maybe I'll call you.
Okay. Christoph, I see a hand.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for sharing this with us. Just as a short disclaimer, Bridge Music is a grateful and proud recipient of both NYSCA and ArtsWestchester past funding. So, thank you. You were especially helpful to us in our early steps when NYSCA funding was not available, because you kind of have to mature into it, as you know, for a few years. So having said all of this, I just can't get my head wrapped around, and I understand it might be hard for you to answer this because it's NYSCA making those decisions, but in this climate where actually arts funding, everybody would agree, is always very difficult. It's never not competitive, right? But in recent years, it's getting harder with developments affecting NEA and federal funding. I have colleagues in the music business who may not be famous to you all, but who have been beneficiaries of NEA, small groups and stuff. And so anyway, now every opportunity that there is in New York State, people take it, including, applying to NYSCA. So my question is this, how would you explain NYSCA's position on, denying applying to ArtsWestchester based on simply filling out the application and not receiving NYSCA grant?
Well, I mean, candidly, I can't defend it. The best I can do is explain it the way it's been explained to me, which is if an organization has decided for themselves that they are the most appropriate to go directly to NYSCA and get NYSCA funds, then by definition, they're not suited for the local funds because they've decided to go for the big cheese. That's how it's been explained to me. Again, we have endeavored to try to get this relaxed. We have not prevailed. But that's why, again, at the risk of subverting my own guidelines and the parameters that have been given to me, maybe it is one of your teaching artists comes in to do maybe not exactly what you've been funded for, but something else that would still support the artists to do some work, because I know that I can't support Bridge Music this year. This is, again, me trying to not come from a place of no and still trying to get the money out into the field, but recognizing that on some of these things, these are the parameters that I've been given.
Okay, thanks. So I appreciate the answer. So just a quick follow-up. There was a year, I can't pinpoint which year, where that rule was lifted, right? Where the NYSCA recipients were allowed to receive the grant. So how did that happen? And is there a chance for this to happen again?
No.
So the reason that we were able to lift that, and I'll take a quick sidestep. I think we're a little over on time, and in a minute I'm gonna have to jump for another call. For certainly 2, if not 3 years, I'm losing track of years myself. It came down to how we were receiving the funding, and we had a couple of cycles where we were receiving the funding directly from the Senate and Assembly. So for those years, it was not a New York State Arts Council regrant. It was a Senate initiative. We kept a lot of the framework the same because it was a familiar grant program and we could still do the work that was intended for, just with greater resources, but it meant that we could relax those parameters because we weren't under their auspices. It is actually a partnership that we wanted to maintain, and had endeavored to return to. And now that we have, because there's a lot of value in being a partner of the State Arts Council, it does mean that now we are back under their auspices because it is their regrant. Do I see this changing again? If I had to look into my crystal ball, I would guess no, because I think that whole world was unique to COVID recovery and American Rescue Plan funds. I see Joanne has a hand.
Hi. So in regards to your prioritizing new applicants, so if I were to apply for this, I would be a new applicant. But if my community partner has received an Arts Alive grant in the past, who gets considered? How does my newness get considered into that?
If so if you are new, you are new. If your partner is returning, that doesn't dim your light because we know your partner. And again, your partner could also apply in their own right. They're welcome to. But
Yeah.
for that parameter. You are new, so you're new.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to take 30 seconds just to show folks where on our website to find more information. Is my screen share still up?
Yep.
Okay, cool. This is the ArtsWestchester homepage. Lots of stuff going on here. We have an exhibition that's opening in a few weeks. Come check us out. So you would mouse over here to grants. And just as a bit of a sidestep, we also have a separate drop down of recent grant recipients. So everyone that was funded last year, meaning 25, is listed. If anyone's curious what we funded last year. So you click over here to grants, and that brings you to our grants page. And here, Arts Live is at the forefront. You would come down here. We have, just so folks know, Monday the 9th, we're doing office hours, which is just an opportunity for questions, but it is a group setting. So if you want to take a couple of days and then come with additional questions, we're doing that on Monday. And then next Wednesday, I will be at the Garner Historic District starting at 6 o'clock to do an in-person session in the Calico, which actually I just visited the other day. It's very cool. So I'll be over in Rockland next week. But if we mouse down a little bit further, so here are the guidelines. If you click on that, it'll then open them up. Strongly encourage folks to spend some time in there. They're a little long, but they've got a lot of detail. And then to actually apply, you would click here, and this would take you to our portal submittable. So we've actually now left the ArtsWestchester website and into the submittable page. And here's what I'd showed you guys before: organization funding or artist funding. I'm a little afraid to click on this because it might take you to the back end, which is the side that I see, and I don't think I want to show you that. But this is where you would come, and this is where you would start clicking through and start looking at the application itself. And as I mentioned earlier, it's good to, I think, start clicking through and start navigating some of the choices, because it might point you in a particular direction if you're waffling between two different focus areas, or again, just to give you a sense of the material and information that you need to have at the ready to actually get this in. I'm here again as a resource for the program itself and things from a fundable standpoint. Anything technical, like, oh, I logged in last year and I forgot my password, that's a submittable question. They do have their own help desk. If someone put in an application on behalf of your organization and that person left, they do have the ability to adjust the login, but that is a help desk question. The best I can do is tell you the email that it came in under last year, but then submittable can help you shift the access again if you don't have the login credentials from the previous year. There is also a feature where you can add collaborators. So let's say a couple of people need to have a hand in the application at the same time. There, you can add them. So once you go in, you start something, you can add a collaborator, and then that person can also be working on the application at the same time. That's the end of my spiel. I already did my last slide, which, pardon, has the contact information. I'll take down my share.
There. That was great, Sue. Thank you. Very detailed. And
you're welcome. I know it's a lot, you guys. We're here to help. Always like to see old faces, not old faces, returning faces, and see some new ones. And yeah, reach out anytime. grants@artswestchester.org, or come show up next week at Garner, and we can chat in person.
Right. And I'll be sending an email out to everybody with the recording, with Sue's deck, and with some links on it for some opportunities with regard to ACOR's programming that's coming up. So yeah, thank you all for attending. And yeah, please take advantage of Sue and her staff and contact them, and really, and start early. I think it's really crucial to do that. And take advantage of their knowledge and their expertise to help you along the way.
I just thought of one other thing to throw out, because this came up in a previous conversation. If anyone had also been the beneficiary of ACOR's grant funding, because I know ACOR does grants, it goes separate and apart. Doesn't doesn't overlap at all. So you could be one and it does not impact your eligibility or fundability for this grant.
Right.
So you
Yes,
could be,
thank you
do it
for
all.
saying that. Yeah, I've had a couple of questions about that recently. So yes. All right. Well, keep in mind that our next meeting is June 4th. And again, keep an eye out for my email. And yeah, thank you all for attending and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.